Well, again, everybody, welcome back. In this part, we're going to talk about CSS units and CSS specificity. When we want to give width, height, some margins, paddings, and some other things, we use some values which has length. And they followed by units such as pixels, EM, RM, and etc. So today we're going to talk about what are those and which one to use in which situations. First, let's say we have simple div here with class name of div, and in style, let's give this width and height. I'm gonna make the height 100 pixel at first and talk about units in this width. And let's give this a background so we can see the div. Okay. Now let's clear our margin. In our document. Okay. Now this is our div. The width, we can use many things. First, we have some static values, and after that, we have some dynamic ones, which these are responsive. First, let's talk about static values. Here we have some units. First, we have cm, which is centimeters. So here, if I give this 5 cm, and if I zoom this to original size, this is 5 centimeters in my display. After this, we have value, which is millimeters. Now you can see if I make this 50 millimeter, it is the same as 5 centimeters. Then we have in, which is inches. For example, let's make it 3 inch. That you see this is 3 inch in my display. And after this, we have pixels, which are the little display dots that we have in our display. For example, if our display is 1080p, it means we have 1920 pixels in the width and 1080 pixels in the height. So if I make this, for example, 200 pixels, it's gonna take 200 of those little lights and make the color of them black. After this, we have our dynamic and responsive values. Here we have EM, which is the base font size of elements. For example, let's say here in our div, we have some texts. And here in style, let's make the color of that white so we can see the text. Now, if I make the font size 2EM, that means I want the font size to be double. 1EM is the base one, that is default, and 2EM or 3EM is that size multiplied by what number we give before EM. Now let's say we have this in 2, and here in our div, we have another span which has text 2 inside it. Now here, if I select my span right here, you'll see now our text, because it is inside our div, is in 2EM. And this size is base size for our span. And if I want to make this multiplied by 2, I'm gonna say font size and make this to EM. Now you see this is again double of this, and this is double of our base value. After this, we have one other thing called rem, which uses the base of our root. The base of this is EM1. So this means 2REM equals 2EM. Now you see if I change this to 1EM, it stays as same as it was. But if I make this REM, you'll see now we have got the base value of our root element, which is our body. So let's write REM right here too. After this, we have view width of our viewport. It means when we write view width, for example, let's say 50 view width. This means we're going to take 50% of width of our viewport. So this is dynamic value. If I change this, you see now the size of our div is going to be changed. After this, we have vh, which is the height of our viewport. So if I give this 60 vh, you'll see now this is 60% of our window's height. And if I change the width of our window, it's gonna change too. After this, let's say we have another div instead of this text is right here with the class name of div2. And let's select that right here and give the background color of red, for example. So now you'll see it takes all of the value of our div. But let's say we want it to be only in 50% of our div. Here we have our first div and here we have second div. Let's select this using its class name, so we change the values to. Here we have, let's say, 60% of our viewport. After this, let's make this static of 100 pixels, and we don't need font size right here. So here, if I give this height of 100 pixel as before, and let's say we want this to be 50% of our viewport. So to do that, we're going to type width and give 50 VW to it. Now you'll see our black div is in 60% and our red one is in 50%. But what if we want to make our red div to be in the half of our black div? Because this is 60% of view width, we can do this by putting this to 30, that you see now it's in the half of our black one, or we can use percentage. And if I type 50%, it means take the 50% of the value of what your parent is. So here, you'll see now our parent div, which is the black div, is taking 60% of our viewport. So when we use 50% in div2, we say that make the width of div2 half of this value, which means 30 VW. And you know that this is dynamic. And if I change the width of our document, it changes automatically. Let's delete all of this and go to next part. Let's say here we have simple div that it has simple background width of 150 pixels and height of 50 pixels. But you know, we can use other selectors to select the same div and give different values to it. For example, let's say here we have the class name of D1 right here. And if I select that using our class name and give this the background of, let's say, red, you see now our background has changed. And another thing that we can do is give this an ID. Again, D1 is the ID. And if I select that using our ID and make the background color, for example, blue, you'll see now this one overrides the before's one. But if I cut this one and paste this right here, you see that instead of the red one that we have specified right here, we get this blue one. And if I make this above this one too, you see again we have this, and this is not going to be override by this or this one. And after this, we have the same thing for our class name. That's because priority of our ID is above our class name or tag selector. But you know, after this, we have two other type of CSS that we can include in our HTML file. First one is our style tag inside our head of our HTML tag, which here we can set our div And let's say we want to make the background green. And let's make these comments too. Now you'll see this one is overridden this one. So the priority of this type of CSS is more than this type. And if we write something right here, and after that write something here, we got these value applied. And if we want to change this values, we have another more priority type of CSS, which is our inline CSS. Which here we write style, and here, for example, let's say we want the background to be purple. Now you'll see this one has overridden this one, and this one overrides this one right here. And if we use this class name, you'll see that nothing happens because the priority of this one is more than this class name. And if we don't have this, you'll see now we have the same priority for these one. Let's delete this one. Let's say we use the class name right here. If we use this, because the priority of class name is more than this tag selector, we got the value of this. But here, if we use class name again, you'll see now this one is going to be applied. But if we use our ID right here, which has the blue background on it, we have this blue one. Because as I told you, the priority of ID is more than class. And again, if we use our ID right here, you'll see now our div is going to be changed to green.